Hi everyone, this is my Wilson Scholars Project. I'm Lily Bruce, and my project is called The Poems of Horace in Modern Day. So why am I doing this? So I loved poetry since I was very young. I was writing it throughout middle school, so that was one of my passions. And then in 6th grade, I took my first Latin class, which was the first class where I really started loving learning, and also I started to get really invested into Latin itself because it was like a puzzle, which I really enjoyed. And then I started learning about the art of poems when I got to Williston, especially with Miss Cody's class, and that really brought together both of my interests, which is really what I want to do in this presentation. So that's what I'm doing for my project. And then at the beginning of the process, looking back at old school work from OneNote, and I was starting to look at poets' work and the work that we did before, and really seeing what I wanted to integrate it into my own style. One poet that really stood out to me was Horace, but I originally I was too ambitious, and I started trying to research all these different ancient Roman poets, but it eventually got too overwhelming because it was hard to integrate all their styles since all of them were so unique. So basically what I'm doing is based on Horace, this is Horace, and you probably know Horace not by his name, but probably by the phrase carpe diem, which is from one of his odes that he wrote. And he is really the master at writing about seasons, which is what I really liked. So an ode that I actually researched last year was ode 4.7, and it was basically about seasons and relating them to human life, but it wasn't just about seasons and life separately. He brought them together, and it kind of gave the seasons personality to really show how life was, or the cycle of life, which is basically what I did for my project. Was I wrote a series of 4 poems that were in English, and I translated a line from each of them, and I put it directly into Horace's style. In the process in the middle, so I started writing my first poem, which was the spring poem. And then I had a meeting with Miss Cody because I was worried as I was writing in English, oh, how will this really be like Horace's writing after I translate it? How can I really get his style down? So after my meeting with Miss Cody, she really helped me solidify my idea where, as I mentioned before, I would make 4 poems and then choose 2 lines that really sum up the whole meaning of my poem, and then translate those and then make them into Horace's style. So then I wrote the outline for the rest of my poems, and then I again looked at Horace's old writing and see what I wanted in mind. So this is the poem I mentioned before, Ode 4.7, and it really is about what I was talking about before with relating seasons with life. As you see, the first line is kind of about seasons of spring and summer, and how quickly summer happens over spring, and then there's the fall season, which the line is very long, and then less is the winter, which the reason why this relates to human life is because the summer and the spring are kind of like your younger years, like teenage and I guess childhood years, and those very quickly pass by. And then there's kind of middle age, young adult kind of years, which seem to draw on longer, which is really shown in how long the line is and in the Latin. And then there's winter, which is older age, which it's a sluggish, runs back again. It's like the cycle of life. So a really important piece of Horace's writing is meter. So you might be asking, what is meter? So meter is kind of a pattern of short and long syllables, and the syllables are kind of long and short. So the lines represent long syllables, and the short ones are the U's. And they're made up of kind of these pairings, which are called dactyls and spondies. And the spondies are the two long syllables, and the dactyls are the long and 2 short syllables. Sorry. So this is the pattern I use for mine, where it has 2 lines, and then the X above means it could be either of them, but you have to stick to that throughout the lines. So this is the spring poem. I'm going to really sum it up in my next one, but I wanted to show you really how it looks in its entirety. And the highlighted lines are the 2 lines I translated. So here are the lines. I'll read it to you in English first. So, start to appreciate everything even if you get seized by the storm of spring. Incipe diligere omnia tempestates vernae te turbant. So basically, the whole meaning of this poem is that spring is a time of just everything's coming to an end, like in the school year. So I really wanted it to relate to me. That's why my project is modern day, because it relates to my life. So spring is like when graduation is coming up, and the trimesters feels very short. And it's like a lot of emotions happening. Which is kind of shown in the Latin, because as you see in the end, there's actually a lot of strong ones, which are supposed to symbolize the storm of spring, which is really like all the dramatic stuff that's going on and really what not to get caught up in. And then here's my summer poem, and the 2 top lines are again what I am translated and put into his poem style. So the land gets warmer and the flames will cease, the sun walks up with leisure. Terra colescit mox perquegnes accipitur omnis otiad ambulat astrum. So again, this poem is basically how summer is very slow, there's no school happening, and it feels like you have such a long time, but it all kind of like weaves together, which I really wanted to show in Latin, where you see like there's a dactyl at the front, but then there's a bunch of long ones, which kind of show how summer really like draws out, but then it quickly speeds up again at the end. And then I had another meeting with Miss Cody, which is really where I found out that this was way more difficult than I originally thought. So meter was really the big problem. I had all my Latin words that I was going to translate, and I wrote all my poems, but when it got to really matching the meter, that was really where I struggled. So I had a meeting with Miss Cody, and even with Miss Cody, who is my mentor, even with her, it started, we both had difficulty finding words that match the meter. Because with meter, if you don't have a word that matches exactly with the short or long vowels, you will have to either entirely find a different word that closely relates to it that keeps the same message, or you have to change everything else around to really match it. So what I did for the last 2 poems, since the first 2 ones took much longer than I expected, the last 2 ones I translated normally, but I will still describe basically what all the poems are about. So here's my fall poem, and again the 2 lines are what I'm translating. So this is the English. With the harvest, leaves are familiar friends. They fall into a pile, and orange paints the trees. Cum perventu folia familiaria sunt, in cumulum cadent, et flava arbis pigunt. So basically this poem is all about fall, and of course in school, fall is basically when school is starting up again, and why I said that the harvest and the leaves are familiar friends. That's where you really see everyone who you've missed over the summer, who you've had so much time away from, which again brings back to the summer, which is because it feels long. And then they fall into a pile, and orange paints the leaves. It's also a time of like new beginnings and change. And then here's the winter poem, and those are the 2 lines. The English and the translation. The white on the earth is not all death. Toga carries happiness when worn. Niveus super terram non est omnis mors. Toga induta laetiam portat. So winter in ancient Roman literature is really about everything's coming to an end. As you know, like the season causes a lot of like leaves to fall down and a lot of plants to die off. But I kind of wanted to say in my poem, again, it's always like looking at like the bright side of things, and like really looking for the good in the life. So I'm saying basically that it's not really all of what Roman literature depicts it as, and it actually brings happiness. Like there's break, but there's also, you see friends, and there's holidays. So it's not all bad as it describes. And then the toga is actually seen as a very positive symbol. So I also described the winter as kind of like a coat as it's being worn, but it's quickly taken off in just a few months. And then here's my bibliography, and that's the end. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Lily? Which poem was your favorite to write?
Well, I kind of had them, the length of them kind of represent the seasons. So like the shortest one was my summer one, but it wasn't my favorite. I would say my favorite one was kind of the winter one, because I kind of wrote winter as kind of being like an animal. It's unpredictable, but it's also kind of like, could be abrupt, it could be like kind of scary. So I kind of like that one because it really related to like that kind of theme throughout it, so I really like that one.
Same question.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that if you didn't have the right word in Latin, you had sort of a chain reaction, you had to change a bunch of other words.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if the reverse ever happened, where if you had a really nice set of words in Latin, it forced you to then change the English to have the English match.
Well, for Horace, that is an interesting point, but for Horace, of course, he was like a fluent in Latin, so I feel like he wasn't concerned with putting it in English, but I guess that would be a problem if I did it in like the reverse way, where I started with Latin and then went into English, so that would have been a problem for me if I went in that order.